Genghis Khan is one of the most popular and legendary figures in history. He is known for his military genius, brutality, and the vast empire he created. But what if I told you there were secrets about his life and legacy that have been hidden from us? Historians often portray Genghis Khan as a ruthless conqueror, whose only goal was to expand his empire through violence and destruction. One of the most infamous atrocities of the Mongol Empire was the destruction of the city of Bukhara. In fact, the Mongol Empire was created by Genghis Khan's grandfather, Kublai Khan. The Mongol Empire was huge, and it was bound to collapse eventually. It is often said that the Mongols were so destructive that they completely destroyed the cities they conquered. However, this is not true. In fact, the Mongols often spared cities that surrendered peacefully, and even rebuilt cities that they had destroyed accidentally. This means that the Mongols were not as destructive as they are often made out to be, and that they were capable of being merciful when it was in their best interest. Secret number 14. The Mongols did not hate Chinese culture. It is often said that the Mongols hated Chinese culture, but this is not true. In fact, the Mongols were very familiar with Chinese culture, and they admired many aspects of it. For example, they adopted the Chinese postal system, and they also built mosques and churches in their empire. This shows that the Mongols were tolerant of different religions and cultures, and they were not as hostile towards China as some people believe. Secret number 15. Genghis Khan was not the only person responsible for the destruction of Genghis Khan is often blamed for the destruction of Khwarezmia, but he was not the only person responsible. In fact, it was really the Caliph of Khwarezmia who was responsible for the destruction of his own city. You see, the Caliph refused to surrender his city to the Mongols, so Genghis Khan was forced to lay siege to it. The Mongols would not have destroyed the city if the Caliph had simply surrendered. However, it is often said that the empire collapsed due to internal conflicts between the various Khanates. This is not true. In fact, the Mongol Empire was relatively stable until the reign of Monkey Khan. It was during Monkey Khan's reign that the empire began to fracture and eventually collapse. This means that the Mongol Empire did not collapse due to internal conflicts, but rather due to the weaknesses of its later ruler. Secret number 12. Genghis Khan was not the only great Mongol conqueror. While Genghis Khan is the most famous Mongol conqueror, he was not the only one. In fact, there were several other great Mongol conquerors, including his grandson, Kublai Khan, and his nephew, Batu Khan. These men were just as skilled and ruthless as Genghis Khan, and they played a major role in the expansion of the Mongol Empire. So while Genghis Khan may be the most famous, he was not the only great Mongol conqueror. When Genghis Khan came to power, he inherited an already existing empire. He expanded it. Secret number 8. Genghis Khan did not use biological weapons. One of the most disgusting secrets of the Mongol Empire is the rumor that Genghis Khan used biological weapons against his enemies. Specifically, there is a story that the Mongols catapulted plague-infected corpses over the walls of besieged cities, infecting the inhabitants and helping to spread the disease. While this story is certainly horrifying, there is no evidence that it ever happened. In fact, it is much more likely that the Mongols simply took advantage of the fact that disease was rampant in the Middle Ages, and that they did not need to use biological weapons to infect their enemies. Secret number 9. Genghis Khan's Great Khan was not an absolute monarchy. While Genghis Khan was certainly the most powerful ruler in the Mongol Empire, he was not an absolute monarch. In fact, he shared power with a group of advisors called the Kru. This group of advisors was made up of members of the Mongol nobility, and they had a lot of influence over Genghis Khan's decisions. This means that the Mongol Empire was not a dictatorship, but rather a constitutional monarchy. Secret number 10. Genghis Khan's successors did not follow his principles. One of the things that made Genghis Khan such a great conqueror was his ability to unite the Mongols under a single banner, and to instill in them a sense of common identity. However, his successors did not share his talent for diplomacy, and they were unable to keep the empire together. In fact, after Genghis Khan's death, the Mongol Empire fragmented into several different connections. This means that the Mongols were not able to achieve the kind of lasting success that Genghis Khan had envisioned. Historians have long believed that Genghis Khan ordered the execution of every man in the city, but new evidence suggests that this may not be true. In fact, it is possible that only the men who resisted the Mongols were killed, while those who surrendered were allowed to live. If this is true, then it would be a much more nuanced and accurate portrayal of Genghis Khan and his empire. Secret no. 5. Genghis Khan was not a child of the steppes. Many people think of Genghis Khan as a quintessential child of the steppes, a nomadic warrior who was born and raised on the open plains of Mongolia. But this is not entirely true. In fact, Genghis Khan was born in a cave near the Anan River. which is not exactly the image we have in our minds when we think of a great conqueror. It may seem like a small detail, but it actually reveals a lot about how we have Secret number 6. Genghis Khan did not marry Bort after saving her from human trafficking. One of the most popular legends about Genghis Khan is that he rescued his future wife, Borte, from human traffickers. While this story is certainly romantic, it is not true. In fact, there is no evidence that Borte was ever enslaved, or that Genghis Khan rescued her from anyone. Instead, the two probably met through their families, as was customary in nomadic cultures. However, this portrayal ignores the complexity of his motivations and the achievements of his empire. In fact, Genghis Khan's empire was not just about conquest. It was also about creating a new world order based on his own values and principles. He believed that his empire would bring peace and stability to the world, and he worked hard to create a system of government that would ensure the prosperity of his people. For example, he established a postal system, standardized weights and measures, and promoted religious tolerance. Secret no. 2. His empire was not just an Asian empire. Many people think of Genghis Khan and his empire as being purely Asian, but this is not accurate. In fact, his empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, and it included territories in both Asia and Europe. This means that the Mongol Empire was one of the largest and most geographically diverse empires in history. It also means that Genghis Khan was not just a conqueror of Asia, but also of Europe. Secret number 3. His empire was not just a military empire. While the Mongol army was one of the most powerful fighting forces in history, it was not the only thing that made Genghis Khan's empire great. In fact, his empire was also great because of its economic and cultural achievements. For example, the Mongols were great traders and merchants, and they established a vast network of trade routes that connected the East and West. They also made great contributions to art, architecture, and literature. So while the Mongol military was certainly impressive, it was not the only thing that made Genghis Khan's empire great. Secrets that could change the way we view him forever. Welcome to my channel, and today let's find out the untold secrets of Genghis Khan's empire. Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some of this video may be offensive or disturbing. We, the makers of this video, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. Secret number 1. His empire was not just about conquest. Secret no. 4. Genghis Khan did not kill all the men of Khwarezm. Secret number 7. Genghis Khan did not create the Mongol Empire. While Genghis Khan is synonymous with the Mongol Empire, he did not create it. Secret number 11. The Mongol Empire did not collapse due to internal conflict. Secret number 13. The Mongols did not completely destroy the cities they conquered. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share. Also make sure to subscribe for more great videos.